everyone. We're back on Facebook Live. It's Natalie again. I'm here today with Dr. Stu Komen, who is our fearless leader, CEO and founder of Walden Behavioral Care. We're super excited to talk about This Is Us, the best new show on NBC. Well, we think so at least. So we are just going to quickly talk about the show. I'm assuming since all of you are watching, you have some kind of interest in the show. But just so that we can quickly fill you all in, we'll try not to use spoilers.
That's hard.
I know. So hopefully everyone's caught up. There wasn't one on last night, so
Right,
we're good.
Right.
Okay, so This Is Us is basically, it's from the producers of Parenthood. I don't know if anyone's watched that, which is also a really good show if you want to catch up on that. But it basically follows a family, and it really just talks about trials and tribulations that are pretty normal to all families. The reason we're talking about it today is because I think it talks a lot about weight and body image in a way that reflects what a lot of people who live in larger bodies feel a lot of the time. And it's a strong woman character, and also there's a lot of different races and different family dynamics, which I think is really unique to popular culture these days. So, Stu, I want to just throw it over to you. Why do you love the show so much?
Well, so
try and keep it a little bit tight.
Okay, so first of all, I have a confession to make, which is that I really like TV.
Yeah.
And TV has gotten so much better over the last several years with streaming, and This Is Us is my current favorite. Thematically, it's so rich, and for anyone who's in the mental health field, there are so many things to look at. And I know we're going to talk about Kate today and her issues, but there's so many things in This Is Us that are worth watching and interesting. And if you think about all of the good series that have come along over the last couple of years, This Is Us has, for first seasons, one of the best first seasons, and it's also one of the best first episodes.
Totally.
Rivals Breaking Bad's first episode as the number one as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So
a little twist at the end.
and besides Kate, I would urge all the people who are watching and listening to this to think about all of the themes that are related to fathers in this. It's very unusual to get a show that is that rich around fathers. And you think about Jack in particular, of course, he's the father that everybody wants to be mostly. But then William, who comes on the scene, and it's unbelievable, just the richness in that area. But let's go to Kate, because that's who we're really here to talk about today.
And just so you know too, reminders, we're going to, please feel free to comment at any point. If you have any questions, we can try and get to it live. I'm not making any promises because we talk a lot about the show specifically. But if you want to comment, we'll do our best to, and Dr. Komen and I will do our best to respond after we are live. Also, we are going to be doing 2 of these, I think, because we, again, talk too much about this. So we're going to today talk about Kate's character, like kind of in the present, and then I think also next time we're going to talk more about how her past kind of, and how she grew up kind of shaped where she is at this point. So hopefully everyone's here at this point. We're going to get into it. Obviously you don't have to watch this live, you can watch it at any point. So feel free to comment, like, whatever floats your boat at this point. Okay, so let's get into it. How does This Is Us kind of relate to the eating disorder community?
Well, I think it's relevant. I think it's, from my experience, it's one of the few shows, in such a broad media that depicts a person who has trouble with food and weight. Whether she has an eating disorder or not is yet to be completely known.
Yeah.
But we certainly know that there's an issue here. What I like about it is, and I know there's controversy around the character. There's some folks, there's been a lot written, but what I personally think is pretty cool is that this is a 3-dimensional person, or they're working to make her 3-dimensional. She's not the sort of jolly clown that we often get, and she's not depicted as a loser, at least from the way that I see it. She's bright, she's articulate, she's introspective, and she is kind of the wise sister for her brother, for her twin brother especially, and both brothers who they lean on. So I think it's a pretty well-rounded character, and so I think it's and then of course the issues that she's facing and how she begins to work through them is absolutely interesting, I think, for anybody who is interested in this topic.
Yeah, for sure. One parallel I saw too was, I think in the opening episode it was, they showed Kate and she was opening the fridge, and on so many of the foods that were considered, or that a lot of eating disorder patients or people in general might consider bad foods, she had Post-it notes on it that said, "Don't eat this. Seriously, don't eat this. Like, don't eat this." And, you know, it's kind of funny, but also it's sort of like, it's really sad that that's how our culture is viewing these foods, and that maybe it's about the balance. So I just wanted to see what you thought about that, and like, what does that mean for people's relationships to food? And
well, so I think the behavior that's shown is not uncommon.
Yeah.
People do lots of different things to try to remind themselves or cue themselves about what changes they want to make. I think that you know, what as I think about it, and I think about how you know, these kinds of things you know, kind of impact people. I would want us to be thinking about how to change the conversation in a person's head. So what I mean by that is not what's good or bad foods, but really what is effective or not effective. So is the idea, or is this behavior of labeling the foods, you know, one way or another, does that help in any way? Rather than to think of it as good or bad, does that help in any way for this person or a person who is trying to lose weight or who has issues around food? Is that going to help them in any way? And if it does, then, you know, it's something that you might continue doing. I think in general, it probably isn't going to be that helpful.
Okay. What about listening to body cues? Like, what is that? So if someone who is living in a larger body is, you know, if they're craving a cookie, like, can they do that? Is that, you know, is that going to be helpful?
Okay, so now you're getting into what is probably really at the core of a lot of this, and in fact, kind of a lot of what we talk about at Walden is the issue of deprivation. Mm-hmm. Anytime that you create a situation in which you feel deprived, there's generally speaking a higher response, a higher backlash that occurs when you do that. So any type of process, and dieting is one of these, that creates deprivation usually doesn't work because of the backlash that comes from it. So that and anything that like potentially these signs that say don't do that, you know, create a sense of, you know, you're doing the wrong thing, you shouldn't do that, is a lot. It's really a very counterproductive conversation that's going on in somebody's head.
Mm-hmm. This just reminds me, I was like on a Golden Grams kick for a while. So I ate a lot of Golden Grams for like the span of like 2 weeks, and so I was like, okay, well maybe I just shouldn't buy them this week. And then so this week I was like, I need Golden Grams, and I was like, it had nothing to do with like me wanting them. I think it just because of the fact that I didn't have them in the house, and so it was almost like I was depriving myself of it. And then my body was like, and my mind was like, I need Golden Grams. So
okay,
it's just
so that's
like,
there you go. There's a true example of how that doesn't work.
Okay. All right, so many people believe that Kate's character represents the real struggle of those who are living in larger bodies. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's developing in the story,
yeah.
and I think we've seen some of it. I think the depiction is pretty realistic most of the time so far. You know, so yeah, I think it's pretty realistic.
Yeah. What would you say about? I know that there's a lot of people in the community who are saying a lot of like fat activists are saying like this is not fair for her to be viewed as this like character who's kind of down in herself, and like just because she's in a bigger body doesn't mean that she wants to lose, doesn't mean that she needs to lose weight.
Okay,
or wants to lose weight.
so two separate questions there. One is it fair? And I could agree with all the activists that there are a lot of things that happen in our society around weight and eating that are not fair and are not helpful in any way. So I totally agree with that. But is it a fair depiction of what people go through? Yes, I think it's a fair depiction because there is a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of really sort of societally induced ideas that work very much against a person who lives in a larger body.
Totally. Good answer.
So is it fair? Yes and no. It's a fair depiction, but it's not fair in general.
Okay, good. Just so you guys know, that was off the cuff, so that was a great answer.
Okay.
That was prepared.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So in one of the more recent episodes, sorry if you haven't seen this one, Kate goes to a clinical interview, and as she explores kind of weight loss programs, she went to a bariatric surgery to explore that option. And so they were saying, they asked her if she binged, and she said yes. So I guess my question was, we don't have a full picture to actually clinically diagnose her with binge eating disorder, but what would you assume, and this is the code, but assume, okay, so we're not saying that she has it, what would you assume? Do you assume that she has it, and also, would her little donut excursion be considered a binge? She called it a binge, but clinically, what determines a binge, and do you think she might have it?
Well, okay, so the donut excursion could qualify as a binge. It's probably in and of itself kind of borderline in terms of because we didn't see her.
We don't know how much.
Right.
Yeah.
So people have a sense about what a binge is, right? And a lot of what it is what does it mean for them?
Okay.
And what's important is not just about the amount of food, which, if we're talking clinically, has to be a good amount of food. It's the context around how it happens. So binging primarily happens in isolation. It's a secret. And the key item about it is what's the rest of the emotional content that goes with it. So in general, for it to be binge eating disorder or a binge, there has to be a good bit of shame that's generated internally by the behavior.
Okay.
So when those things occur together, eating a lot of food in isolation with a lot of emotion, particularly shame, you're talking about a binge.
Okay.
So does that qualify? Well, she was in the car by herself. And feeling pretty bad. So it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there's a sense of, isn't there like, you kind of like shut off sometimes if there's
It could be
binge?
automatic. You're eating and eating. There's no sense of fullness. There's no sense of kind of being, having been hungry and then getting full.
Okay. And are binges typically planned?
Are they planned? Generally, no. They sort of occur, but it's interesting if you work backwards from an episode of a binge to things that happen during the day, you can see antecedents of and almost predict that a binge might happen, right?
Okay.
So if somebody's not eating normally and depriving themselves, that would often set the stage for a binge. But the other things that set the stage for a binge are really emotional triggers. Okay. Things that happen during the day that don't get dealt with well, and that go sort of become just underneath. They kind of work their way into a person's mind, and they feel like they failed to handle a situation right, or they took an insult and didn't do anything about it. So those are the kinds of things that often trigger a binge that occurs later.
And it sounds like Kate could have been triggered because she had just kind of had a little fight with Toby, and she told Toby to eat the dessert but she wasn't going to, so that was kind of depriving herself. So it kind of really did set herself
Right.
up to binge.
Right. So there was a interaction that didn't go well.
Yeah.
She didn't handle it well. She wasn't happy with herself for the way she handled it.
Right.
That could qualify.
Yeah. Okay. Justin and Kelly, thank you so much for the kind words. It's really sweet. So Kate explores bariatric surgery as an option for weight loss. If she was your patient, how would you help her decide whether or not the surgery was for her? And if she did decide to go through it, how would you help her to prepare herself?
Okay. So the first part of that is kind of complicated. When you're thinking about doing something that's so drastic, you should really go through a process of reviewing what have you tried, what are all the things that you've done, and I would include, and at Walden we do include some reading and discussion about how society works and doesn't work on your behalf to create a situation where you feel like you need to make this major change in the way that you look. If in fact that's what the driver is how you look as opposed to how healthy you are, then you can assume that a lot of the way that you're making your decision has to do with messages that you're getting from outside, and maybe for many, many years.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm talking to somebody who's considering bariatric surgery, I want to know that they've thought kind of deeply about a variety of issues, from how they feel about themselves to how they deal with emotions to what kind of messages they have internalized over the years. That's not to say that I wouldn't recommend it, even if there's all of those things. But it's good to know what those things are, because then you're going to do a better job at really putting together a process that helps you to make the kinds of changes that would support bariatric surgery. The surgery in and of itself does work well for some people, but we often at Walden see people who it didn't work for.
Right.
So that and as we get going and there's been more and more bariatric surgeries, there's more and more people who it hasn't worked for. Why doesn't it work? Doesn't work because people haven't really understood that major change is going to be necessary anyway.
Yeah.
Just because you have the surgery doesn't mean the change is done for you.
Exactly.
It means that that's just one thing in a long chain of behaviors that have to be changed so that this will work.
Right. And if you change the body, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change the mind.
Right.
So
You
that's
can change the plumbing and the mind still works the same
Yeah.
way.
Okay.
So that's what we talk about a lot, and so actually we have a bariatric support program, and what that's all about is helping somebody prepare for the surgery, helping them understand the role of emotions and how to handle them, and helping them understand nutrition and the changes that they're going to have to make once they've changed their stomach, so they just have this little pocket, and now they're really going to have to change the way that they approach eating.
Right.
Right? And then the aftermath, which is also very interesting, because we've seen a lot of people who have lost a good amount of weight, and all of a sudden it's not exactly the magic bullet, the panacea that they thought it was going to be. There's problems that come with that too. So there are things on afterwards that have to really be followed through and understood, and how is your life changing because of this major surgery.
Right. So spoiler alert, Kate decides not to get the surgery.
Oh,
Sorry. I said it before.
but we don't know if she
Well, we don't know.
forever.
Right,
She
exactly.
temporarily decides.
Right.
Right.
And she decides to go on, I don't even know what it's called. It's sort of like
A retreat.
a retreat, and they don't use weight loss as their selling point, which is great. So basically she goes here, and it's just kind of like immersing yourself in nature and kind of working through they say what's behind the weight, which I loved, working through that. So I guess what's kind of like, I feel like Kate's going through like a typical journey that someone in a similar circumstance, living in a larger body, might go through. Kind of like this weight loss, like finding themselves journey. And I think a lot of it has like includes yo-yo dieting, going to therapy, trying to, support groups. Kate went to, it looked like kind of like an OA group, I think, Overeaters Anonymous. And then she explores bariatric surgery, and then she goes here. So how can a lot of people relate to Kate's journey, and what services are out there for people in a similar circumstance?
Yeah, so a couple of questions there. So one thing is, there's so much stuff out there that it's really hard to choose, right? I was hearing things on the radio coming in today about this program. I heard about 2 different programs just in a 15-minute drive. So there's so much stuff out there, weight loss camp, fat camp, and all the way from that to mindful eating or to food addiction. There's so much stuff that it's very hard to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. I think the show is interesting, and it might be a little bit hokey. She goes on this retreat to a sort of boutique program, is what I would think of it as. What I like about the message on the boutique is that it's not about the food. Right?
Or the weight.
Or the weight.
Yeah.
It's about what's behind it.
Yeah.
And we all really approach it that way as well. It's really about how these behaviors have formed and what they reflect about how you feel about yourself, and what messages you've taken in from society and from outside about what you should look like and how you should act and what you should eat. And the shoulds are a big part of the problem.
Right.
And it's a big process of rolling that back to, what is going to work for me, and what is really my idea about myself and my size and how I want to live my life. It takes quite a bit and a lot of courage and a lot of work to roll it back.
And I think also it's important to know that like even people who are living in normal sized bodies or people who are living in larger bodies, there's a continuum, right? What did you say? It was we treat A to O. A to O, which is like anorexia all the way to obesity. So there's this big continuum, and it's hard to know where you should enter treatment and what treats what. And so like what can we offer? What can Walden Behavioral Care offer to someone who's struggling with weight? And like when would it be appropriate for them to come in, and where can we suggest they go if it's not appropriate?
So there we have a lot to offer. A piece of really good news is that there are empirically validated treatments for binge eating that absolutely do work.
Okay.
And we offer that. It's a cognitive behavioral approach. It has been.
And what's that? What is that? Just
cognitive behavioral approach is changing the way that you think about food and the way that you use food to deal with situations in your life, emotions in your life, and we help you to learn different ways to actually be more effective in living, so that you don't use food to make yourself feel better.
Okay.
Walden really, that really is at the core of all the things that we do around food and emotional overeating, compulsive eating. But nutrition is also a huge part of it. It's amazing how many people can eat a lot and still not get good nutrition.
Yeah.
We have found that. So we want to learn about that. We want to learn about food cues and how to respond. But the first part of it really is sort of taking control of the schedule of eating and putting it on a basic schedule that's predefined, so that you're not thinking about it all day. Part of the issue for people who are struggling with it is this obsessing about the meal or not the meal, or what to eat and what not to eat, when to eat. So we sort of take that away for a while.
Okay.
Later you can come back and alter it.
Right.
But we take that away put it in a structure that's prescribed, and then move on to
And individualized.
it's individualized,
Yeah.
prescribed, and then move on to these other issues around how to be more effective in your life. And binging, the binge part reduces quite readily. So generally speaking, in the course of 6 to 12 weeks, we can help anybody to get over a binge eating disorder, to really reduce that.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean that you're going to lose a lot
I was
of
just
weight.
gonna say that.
Okay, right. So you might not lose a lot of weight just then.
Right, and it's
Little-
also not the goal.
Right.
For-
It's not the main goal. There should be some weight loss that occurs naturally over time as the result of eating in a more normative way,
Yes.
right? And then there are other things that we can do to help you to lose weight. And there are some medications that can be helpful for people who are, kind of still stuck in thinking about the food obsessively. We can help with that.
Cool. All right. Do we have any questions? Not at this moment. Okay, we do have an announcement thank you so much, Dr. Kerwin, for doing this. Was so fun. We're going to do another one, like I said, not really sure when yet, but next week we are doing an athletes and eating disorder presentation. And it's going to feature a recovered former All-American runner and also an Olympic hopeful with one of our nutritionists as well, so that's going to be so fun. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and we are excited to see you next week. Take
Bye,
care.
y'all.